Welcome to Men's Net. We're glad you're with us. My name is Mel Feit, and I'll be filling in today for Roy Barreca and Tony Nazzaro. Tony has produced about 130 episodes of Men's Net. He could do 1,000 more or 10,000 more. I doubt he could do a Men's Net more important than the one that we're about to do. We're going to talk now about the one thing that most people want the most and most people fail to get, and that's a deep and lasting, intimate connection with another person. I know it's what I've always wanted. I haven't gotten it, sadly, but I've always wanted to know a woman and to have her know me, and I've wanted that knowing to be intellectual and emotional and spiritual and physical, a complete intimacy. I think I'm not the only person who hasn't gotten it, and when people fail to get that intimacy, there are consequences. There are relationship disturbances and psychological disturbances, and we're going to talk on this show about the consequences of missing intimacy, and we're going to try to help people get more of the intimacy that they want. Now, because this is Men's Net and not Relationship Net, let me just say this by way of introduction. Speaking as a man, and speaking honestly, I have never been in an intimate relationship with a woman where I felt I could talk openly about what I was really feeling. Honest communication has never led to greater intimacy. For me, it has always led to greater evaluation and criticism. And I'm not the only man who feels this way. I think a lot of men figure it out. When women tell us that they want us to talk more honestly to them about what we're really feeling, they do not want us to talk honestly about what we're really feeling. A man who does that, who talks openly about vulnerability, about anger, about fear, that man does that at the risk of his relationship. And not just in private, publicly as well. Those of us who have tried to raise issues of importance to men in public forums like this, we've been met by leaders of women's groups who have responded to our raising our issues with their own anger and their own hostility. There's not a lot of non-judgmental listening going on between men and women in public or in private, and we're going to try to fix all of that in the next half an hour. Joining me to have this discussion are Dr. Sheila Chiffriller. Dr. Chiffriller is an assistant professor of psychology and an assistant director of counseling at Pace University in Pleasantville. Welcome to Men's Net, Dr. Chiffriller. I can call you Sheila.
Sure. Thank you.
And also with us on the panel is Dr. Wayne Gersh. Dr. Gersh is the clinical director at the Westchester Center for Behavior Therapy. Did I get it right?
That's correct.
And welcome to Men's Night, Dr. Gersh, and I'll call you Wayne if you don't mind.
Not a problem.
And also joining us is Kelly Riley. Kelly works for a bank in Manhattan, and welcome to Men's Night, Kelly.
Thank you.
And welcome all. All right, I want for you to define the issues that separate men and women, the obstacles to intimacy, but let me just first start by asking this. In my opening, I said that as a man, I felt I couldn't talk honestly to women. And I honestly think that a lot of men feel that way. They feel evaluated and judged. I think that's a common feeling among men. My question to you is, do you think women understand this about men? I mean, the very basic obstacle that we feel in communicating, is this something that women know that men feel? Dr. Gersh?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I totally agree with what you're saying, because I understand that you feel that a lot of men believe, and I know that you're saying that you believe that you haven't been well understood by women, but I think that's because men typically are going into fields in which they're constantly being judged. They're being judged about their performance constantly. They're being told, are you doing a good job? If they're not doing a good job, they fear for losing their jobs. So when they get into relationships, now all of a sudden they get into this I'm being judged mode again. And most men, when they feel judged, run away from that judgment, as opposed to rushing towards what I consider to be effective communication. And effective communication is when we're dealing with emotions and we're dealing with the concept of, I really need you to understand something, whether it's from you as a man, or I want to hear what you have to say as my wife or my girlfriend or my lover, whatever you want to call that person.
Well, do you think the problem I identified at the opening, that men feel that they can't openly discuss what they feel with the women in their lives, do you think that that's uncommon among men, common among
No,
men?
I think that's common, but when you say that they can't, I reverse that and I say you don't have a physical disability. You can do it.
You can. And is it, and the reason that men don't in your mind, because this gets to the issue of where the obstacles are to intimacy, the reason that men don't, what exactly are they afraid of that would prevent them from opening up?
Well, I think that they're afraid of being exposed on some level, and they're afraid of emotion. Because one of the factors that we both have to agree on is that men are not raised to be emotional human beings. They're always told to suck it up, whether it's at the baseball field and they strike out, and if you're young and you start to you cry or you're upset, Dad says, suck it up, you're a man, what are you doing? And so there's never a belief that you should have an emotional response to an event. And so when you get into a relationship, why is that any different?
Well, let me just, and I want to get to Sheila, but I just want to, before we do that, let me just, I pulled out an article in the recent issue of Reader's Digest about men communicating about their feelings, and one man is quoted as saying, I think this is very revealing, I'd just like to share this with you. He says, in one breath, a woman says she wants us to be emotionally open. In the next, she wants us to be her rock. Women are asking us to perform these incredible emotional gymnastics, and it is messing with our heads. Now, see, this is the theory that I want to put forward for all of you. My theory is this. I don't know that you can have security and intimacy side by side. If your main goal in a relationship is to enhance your security out of their relationship, and frankly I think that's what most women are looking for in marriage, if your main goal is to enhance security, then your partner will have a very difficult time opening up and being emotionally intimate, because the essence of emotional intimacy is being able to show insecurity. Now, if I know that the woman I'm with is depending on me to be steady, to be her rock, I will not open up and show her my vulnerability and my fear. You might not be able to have both.
I completely disagree. I mean, as a woman, and I know that men and women are different, I've had to learn how to show my vulnerability and maintain strength and see how they go together. And so when I think of what a man could do in relationship with me that would foster, would maintain that stability and strength but also be open, it starts with presence, like just really being present with a woman and not being really distracted, and going inside and going into the heart and finding that place of safety with your own emotions or with your own feelings or what's in your heart. And I think that's completely possible. As a woman, I've found that it's possible. And it's not easy, it's scary, but it's like building a muscle. It's a skill you learn to be able to open your heart and be honest and express, but at the same time know that that can be a safe space.
But if the opening of the heart creates conflict in your, suppose you have things to tell your partner that will be difficult for her or him to hear, that will create conflict in your relationship, opening of the heart then is something that you might want to avoid if you think it's going to lead to conflict. So let me just ask Sheila now, is it better to embrace conflict, to open your heart to conflict which might destroy a relationship and to take that risk, or is it better to, what I think a lot of people do, is to avoid the conflict in order to save a relationship?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by conflict. I don't think that either route is necessarily enriching. But what I think it's important to get to is you might believe that you cannot allow yourself to be vulnerable. But what you have to admit is you need to take responsibility. Usually when there's difficulty in a relationship, if someone does not have a very fulfilling relationship, part of that problem is that both parties are not taking responsibility. And you may feel that you cannot allow yourself to be vulnerable, but more likely you are choosing not to be vulnerable. The choice that you're making.
But if I've learned through my relationships, and I just really think this is a common experience among men. I mean, I've run support groups for men, by now counsel thousands of them, and the general consensus is that if you show too much of your fear, if you show too much of your insecurity of things that you feel you can't do, that might jeopardize a relationship. So if a man feels that way, and that's what I feel,
or believe.
But my belief is based on experience. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think that do you think that this is something that in a way that I'm judging women unfairly?
No, I think it's just a matter of whether what you feel is expressing your emotion. Are you really expressing emotion, or is it more than that? And when you do express your emotion, if your partner doesn't respond the way you would like her to, are you open to what's going on within her that's driving her behavior?
Right. Suppose I have something to say to her that's critical, or that would evoke defensive reaction in her naturally.
Okay.
How do I do it in a way that doesn't evoke a defensive reaction? It's a need I have that involves some sort of a